Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we are going to completely shatter a massive myth, the myth of fixed intelligence. For basically our whole lives, society has told us that we're just dealt a certain cognitive hand at birth and that's it. You get what you get. But modern psychology, it tells a very, very different story. We're going to look at how specific and sometimes even kind of weird daily habits actually upgrade our brain physically. We are talking about literal neurological changes that enhance the depth of your thought and, yes, your actual IQ.
Okay, let's dive into this blueprint for your cognitive upgrade. Here is our agenda for today. 1. The myth of fixed intelligence. 2. The power of intellectual discomfort. 3. Metacognition. 4. The discipline of silence. 5. Why sharp minds walk alone. And finally, 6. Rewiring your brain daily.
Section 1. The myth of fixed intelligence. Why IQ isn't set in stone.
Right off the bat, it's time to explicitly debunk this remarkably common, yet entirely false societal belief. The idea that your intelligence just abruptly stops growing the second you graduate from school. This is the foundational psychological reality we really have to wrap our heads around today. Research shows us that intelligence isn't just some giant, dusty filing cabinet of memorized facts in your head. It is fundamentally about your style of thinking. It's about your decision-making processes and your problem-solving abilities. When you train how your brain approaches a problem rather than just rote memorizing what the answer is, you are actively increasing your IQ.
And this brilliantly illustrates the stark difference between an emotional, reactive brain and a logical, problem-solving mind. Low-level thinking basically stops right at the surface facts and uses highly emotional language. It sounds like, oh man, this is terrible, or I hate this. But high IQ thinking, it digs way deeper. It asks why things happen to build actual cause and effect chains, and it relies heavily on neutral language. So instead of I hate this, a sharp mind says, okay, this is inconvenient. What can I adjust? Less drama literally equals more intelligence, because neutral language keeps your brain securely locked in problem-solving mode.
Section 2. The power of intellectual discomfort. Stretching your understanding.
If we really want to escape shallow thinking, we have to willingly embrace the friction of difficult material. Intelligence doesn't grow from easy breezy content. It grows from things like philosophy, challenging science, or dense, long-form writing that literally forces your brain to stretch. And the absolute secret here is the number one. Just one. Learning exactly one difficult skill deeply. See, trying to learn everything all at once, jumping frantically from one hobby to another with ever going deep, actually lowers your overall cognitive performance. High IQ growth comes from focused, singular struggle.
Which brings us to a concept we need to completely reframe right now. When you commit to a hard skill, maybe it's coding or writing or learning a new language, you are going to feel confused. It's inevitable. But here's the thing. Confusion is not failure. Not even close. It is neuroplasticity in action. That frustrating feeling of struggle and effort is the literal scientific signal of your brain physically building new neural connections and upgrading itself.
Now look at how this applies to our everyday choices. Instant pleasure trains the brain to basically run away from effort. But delayed pleasure, that trains the brain to plan. When you resist doom scrolling on your phone for another hour, or you skip grabbing that junk food so you can work toward a long-term goal, you are actively strengthening your executive function. This is the exact same brain system used for high-level reasoning, planning, and scoring high on IQ tests. Discipline isn't about punishing or forcing yourself. It's about training your intelligence.
Section 3. Metacognition. Questioning your thinking.
Let me ask you this. Do you treat your opinions like they are your identity? Because setting up true mental flexibility means learning how to detach from your own need to be right. Being able to genuinely sit down and ask yourself, hey, what if I'm wrong? Or what am I assuming here? Is the ultimate sign of mental flexibility. It is absolutely not a weakness. Intelligent minds don't just boldly declare, I'm right. They actively hunt for their own blind spots.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how psychology defines this exact trait. Metacognition is, quite literally, thinking about your own thinking. When you practice this habit, you aggressively chip away at your own bias and false confidence. You are essentially replacing fragile human ego with bulletproof accuracy.
Rigid minds stay completely stuck, endlessly defending their opinions even when the facts prove them wrong. But highly flexible, intelligent minds, they do these three things constantly. They adjust their beliefs the second new facts appear. They calmly review their mistakes, which psychology actually calls error-based learning, by the way, and it is one of the fastest ways to improve reasoning. And third, they track their own behavior patterns. When you analyze your own procrastination or your own social reactions, you activate self-pattern recognition, and that rapidly accelerates your decision-making skills.
Section 4. The discipline of silence. The cognitive pause.
Let's talk about how we interact with what is an incredibly noisy world. We often think of intelligence as, speaking brilliantly or having the fastest comeback. But smart thinking actually begins in the moments of total silence. First, the trigger happens. A text, a stressful event, a weird comment. Most people react instantly, keeping their brain trapped in a highly emotional survival mode. But people with higher IQs employ step 2, the cognitive pause. They wait. And in that brief silence, step 3 occurs. The brain physically shifts out of survival mode and clicks into reasoning mode, allowing cognitive control to completely override emotional impulses.
Have you ever felt just entirely drained by constant noise and notifications? Trust me, you aren't alone. Most people genuinely fear silence and constantly escape it with their phones. But when you sit alone, without distraction, your brain finally enters deep processing mode. Escaping constant stimulation isn't just about relaxing on a Sunday afternoon. It's a fundamental biological requirement for strengthening your focus and your intelligence.
And let me tell you, this daily practice of silence pays off immensely when chaos hits. While everyone else panics, maintaining a calm detachment, simply observing logically instead of reacting emotionally, is known as cognitive control under stress. It is an exceptionally rare, highly self-regulated trait in today's incredibly reactive age. And it stems directly from mastering that simple pause.
Section 5. Why Sharp Minds Walk Alone. The Psychology of Few Friends.
Having very few friends is so frequently misunderstood as being antisocial or worse, somehow broken. So the crucial point is this: if you have few friends, you probably don't hate people. You just likely possess extraordinarily high social and interpersonal sensitivity. You instantly pick up on micro behaviors, shifts in tone, tiny hesitations, and especially the words people aren't saying. Because your brain processes all these social interactions so deeply and intensely, your nervous system simply burns a ton more energy during social contact, which means you require much more recovery time.
These socially selective minds are not running away from relationships. They just have a much higher standard for connection and honestly despise fake small talk about the weather. Because of that extreme sensitivity, they just need more downtime to recover. They possess low social dependency, meaning they're incredibly self-sufficient and find absolute comfort within their own minds. Past experiences often give them a more cautious trust threshold, and they boast an incredibly rich, deep inner world. Isolation here is a sign of high standards, not a failure to connect with the world.
Psychology points out that these are classic signs of an extremely rare personality type. They crave raw truth over mere applause or social status. They think in complex systems and layers and contradictions, not just simple black and white lines. They feel things incredibly deeply, but process almost all of it internally, backed by this constant, highly analytical inner dialogue. Operating on this unique frequency of authenticity makes adapting to fake, surface-level groups basically impossible. Honestly, you'd rather be alone than play a role.
Section 6. Rewiring your brain daily. Consistent cognitive habits.
Let's bring this explainer home by looking at practical, consistent steps you can take every single day. Because if you want a cognitive upgrade, you have to shift your baseline habits. Move from hiding behind complex words to explaining your ideas simply. Seriously, if you truly understand a concept, you don't need fancy jargon to make it clear. Shift from judging behavior emotionally to observing patterns logically. Start asking what motivates an action rather than just reacting to it. And finally, move from acting on immediate feelings to simulating long-term consequences. This kind of future-oriented cognition is exactly what separates impulsive minds from highly intelligent ones.
And this really summarizes our entire narrative arc today. Intelligence is absolutely not a genetic lottery ticket that was somehow finalized the very day you were born. It is a daily practice. It grows quietly, day by day, through the deliberate habits that train deeper thinking.
So, knowing that your brain literally and physically rewires itself when you push through confusion and struggle, what intellectual discomfort will you invite into your life today?